How do I trust a man when I feel like he has turned his back on me when I became vulnerable? How do I love again?
That's the one I would have chosen.
Okay, well, maybe we can both speak to it. We've got a number of questions, and I think that this depends on whether you're still with this person or not. And when you say, how do I love again? I'm assuming that this relationship has ended, and you're wondering, how can you love again? How can you learn to trust another man again? And there's a lot of things in life that happen to us where we essentially we take on a position, and sometimes we take on the victim position, and we say that this happened to me and this person did that to me, and I can never do it again. And I love an example that Wayne Dyer would give in some of his public lectures when he was teaching, which was if we got out of bed in the middle of the night and we stub our toe on the corner of the bed frame. In that moment, we could take on an immature perspective, a limited perspective, and say, oh boy, I'm never getting up again in the middle of the night. And you know what? I better not even get out of bed because it's just dangerous. You can hurt yourself in the world. You stub your toe. It's not safe to get around. And we do the same thing in relationship. We have an experience that's hurtful and painful, and we make significant meaning about that. And often we make meaning about ourselves. We take it personally, make up a story that we're not this, we're not that, we're not enough in some way. We make up a story about all men, about who they are and what they want. And maybe they're all out to get us, so they're all selfish bastards and they don't want the same kind of love you want. So part of the process here moving forward is to unravel your experience, to process your experience, and to understand that this person that turned their back on you when you became vulnerable, that choice probably has very little to do with you and has a lot to do with them. But we have this tendency to make negative meaning about ourselves and to take it personally. And it often inserts to plugs right directly into a program, a series of programs that we're running in our family system. So if you're asking this question now and you say, how do I love again? I'm picking up on maybe a lack of hope, a lack of confidence that you can. And in my experience, it takes time to disconnect, to move away from, to grow from relationships that end, to process those events in a way that makes sense for us in a healthy way, hopefully with some professional support if it's needed, to really integrate that experience and have someone check our reality, check our attitudes and beliefs, and get some support to make sure we're handling things in an empowered way to support our growth and development versus taking on meaning, taking on certain burdens that we put on ourselves that might not be ours to carry. So that'll be part of my answer here. And I'll say from my personal experience, I've seen people love again. I have seen people come out of disastrous situations, traumatic situations, unthinkable, unspeakable things that have happened to them. And they have healed and they have grown and they have moved on with their life because they've chosen to. And I think that choice is available to all of us when we're met with adversity, when we're met with difficult circumstances. Not to deny the pain and suffering, deny how hurtful and difficult and terrible certain things are, but still to make a choice that to say, okay, I want to work through this. I want to create this kind of life. I want these things to happen. And even if I don't fully believe in this moment that I can do it, that I'm going to learn how, I'm going to figure that out. And sometimes you need people to lean on for that, which is why
Mhm.
community is such an important part of life, living a meaningful life, but a big part of recovering from a breakup like this.
Great answer. Yeah, this person, I gave you the abbreviated version of what this person asked because it was a long paragraph, but she also basically said that this man left her. He was committed to her and committed to marriage, and then she opened up further and her trauma was coming up and she was letting her masks down. And now he's saying, you're too much. I can't handle your emotions. And ejecting her and leaving her. And man, that hurts. I'll acknowledge that hurts and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be rejected for who they are. And yet that is something that does come up in romantic relationship all the time. Sometimes we aren't a good fit for each other and we may have been open and vulnerable with one another and we split up and we can take that as rejection for who we are. It's very hard to reframe that kind of rejection into this person's actually doing you a favor by Mark Groves says when someone ghosts you, they're actually doing you a favor by removing themselves from your life because they're not a good fit for you. You didn't have to dump them. They dumped themselves. And really, from that perspective, from this sort of detached, big picture, top down view, is yeah, this wasn't going to work because this person has judgments about you that aren't going to work in this relationship. You're just not a fit. There have to be a lot of ingredients that go into a romantic relationship that works. And two of the basic ones are that you both want to be with each other. And so if the other person doesn't want to be with you, they need to go. And so on some level, you just have to accept that if someone leaves you when you show them your most vulnerable stuff, that means they can't handle their emotional stuff, their vulnerable stuff. You've triggered them and they can't handle yours. It has nothing to do with whether you are valuable in the world or not. And what comes up for me in answering this question is this idea of sort of unconscious relationship versus conscious relationship. And in unconscious relationship, we have a certain set of conditions growing up, a certain amount of wounding that occurs in our parental relationships, and then our early relationships, maybe our early romantic relationships in life, also sustain certain wounding and certain patterns. And we proceed to play out those same patterns over and over in one way or another in our life, trying to resolve them unconsciously. And inevitably, we actually find that we recreate our own problems over and over again. And the tendency is to want to shut down, close our hearts, and just say, okay, relationship doesn't work. It's not for me. And take external locus of control, like you're talking about with stubbing your toe on the bed, and say, it's just not safe out there. I shouldn't do this anymore. And so you're stuck in the same patterns and you're in a hopeless state, not really knowing what you're doing. Conscious relationship is about waking up to how, in many different ways, are you actually creating your own reality and calling certain lessons into your life, as you were describing, the universe providing those to you. And you actively engage your inner work around relationship, looking into how did my relationship with my father affect how I see men? If I'm a man, thus me. How did my relationship with my mother affect how I see women and whether I trust them or not, or what I'm triggered by in women? And how have I been playing out some of these patterns in my relationship? And doing your own internal therapy and processing around this, and also being open to discussing that in relationship with someone who is willing to do. And essentially, this process of being in conscious relationship is the ability to clean out, clear, and repattern the ways that we show up in relationship, so that you're not just adding more pain to the pile every time you have a relationship. You're actually learning more, you're releasing more, you're untying some of those knots that were tied when you were younger that sort of keep coming up. So it's a productive cleansing, cleaning opportunity and an opportunity for growth. And so if you're willing to embrace a conscious relationship, you need to be willing to get hurt. You need to be willing for your heart to hurt, because that's just going to happen in life altogether. We have this conundrum. Is it better? Remember Men in Black, where I think it's Agent K, his wife had died, or he was never able to see his wife again. And Will Smith, I can't remember his agent name, but he said, hey, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, right? And Kay was like, not into it. Like, just, he was so in pain that he wasn't willing he would have taken it all back if he could have, because he couldn't stand the pain. He had closed his heart to it all, right? I don't know why I always remember that, but I also remember Aubrey Marcus saying once that one of the tenets he lives by is live with your heart open and let everything go, because that's the warrior way, the warrior lover way. And that always resonated with me. You can close it down, stay safe for your whole life, never open up and never get hurt, which will hurt in itself. Or you can live with your heart open, be willing to love, willing to lose, play the game big, and hopefully die with very few regrets because you lived a full life. So that's my philosophical argument for, hey, figure out how to lean back into love and you'll find the right person.